Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. Coming up in the next hour, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi reaches Singapore on the last leg of his two-nation tour of Southeast Asia that also took him to Brunei. Ukraine's Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba resigns as part of the biggest government reshuffle of the 30-month-old conflict with Russia. The US files terrorism charges against 6 Hamas leaders, including its chief Yahya Sinwar, accuses them of orchestrating the 7th October attacks in Israel. And in sport, India bags its highest ever tally of 20 medals at the Paris Paralympics. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has landed in Singapore a short while ago. The Prime Minister is visiting Singapore at the invitation of Prime Minister of Singapore Lawrence Wong. He is on a 2-day visit to the Southeast Asian country. During his visit, Prime Minister Modi is scheduled to meet Singapore's President Tharman Shanmugaratnam and other leaders. After concluding his successful Brunei visit, Prime Minister Modi is now visiting Singapore. The ASEAN nation has been a traditional ally of India and its highest source of foreign direct investment. The visit by the Prime Minister is likely to strengthen the economic and cultural ties between the two countries. My colleague Akshay Dongre reports from Singapore.
After his first ever bilateral visit to Brunei, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is visiting Singapore after a gap of 6 years. This is Prime Minister Modi's 5th visit to Singapore after he assumed office and has enthused the Indian diaspora across the East Asian country.
Our foreign policies are improved. That's what I can see, I can feel. People are, other people talking about our country. So I think a lot of positive things are happening. And I'm excited as PM is coming here. And surely all Indians will celebrate and will welcome him.
The visit to Singapore is significant as this is PM Modi's first visit after assuming a 3rd historic term, along with Lawrence Wong assuming the charge of Prime Minister of Singapore this year in the month of May. The bilateral visit is likely to deepen relations between the two nations.
It's a very important and a historic visit. It's Prime Minister's 5th visit, as you rightly mentioned. Now, a visit very early on in his 3rd term is really historic because Prime Minister Lawrence Wong also has taken office in May, and a meeting between two prime ministers very early on in their respective tenures will set the course for our bilateral relationship in the next decade or so.
India and Singapore have been traditional allies with shared heritage, history and cultural ties, along with deep economic relations. The impetus given by the Modi government has significantly improved the bond between the two nations. Besides cultural ties, the visit by Prime Minister Modi will focus on futuristic cooperation in areas including digitalization, sustainability, skills, health, connectivity and advanced manufacturing. These include semiconductors and aviation technology. Taken all together, these are likely to give a boost to economic cooperation between the two nations.
Certainly, Singapore having a small percentage of Indian and Indian origin people, they make culturally much more share of the noise of Singapore because there's so much of activity that happens which draws a lot of people. And we talk about culture, it's not only classical arts, it is non-classical arts, even the Bollywood, even yoga, even Indian Ayurveda, and all forms of Indian culture. Food is a very big part of it.
Indian community is one of the largest and perhaps most important communities of Singapore that has left a permanent mark on the culture of the country. As you can see everywhere, there will always be something that reminds you of India, of Indian heritage that you will find in the country. And while there has always been close cultural and historic ties between the two countries, now amid the changing geopolitical scenario, there is an increasing closer strategic relation between the two countries as well. And to nurture and to strengthen this relationship, Prime Minister Narendra Modi of India is visiting Singapore, where the two countries will aim at significantly enhancing the close ties that the two countries share at this moment. With camera person SP Dubey in Singapore, Akshay Dongre, DD India.
All right, joining us is Dr. TCA Raghavan. Dr. Raghavan is a former Indian High Commissioner to Singapore. Ambassador, welcome to DD India News Hour. If I may begin by asking you, how would you describe India-Singapore ties, especially in the last decade or more?
Well, India-Singapore ties encompass many dimensions, and it is an important and very deep-rooted relationship for many years. On the whole, it is a problem-free relationship which enables the different potentialities in different sectors to be harnessed very effectively. As your report mentioned, India and Singapore are major trading partners. Singapore is India's third or fourth largest trading partner in the world, possibly the largest trading partner in ASEAN. It is also a major source of FDI for India. And in addition, there is a very strong and vibrant people-to-people relationship. We should not forget that the people-to-people relationship is very old. And while there are cultural ties between India and Southeast Asia, which go back to millennium, the people-to-people relationship has many dimensions which are quite modern. Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, for instance, had established the Indian National Army in Singapore. And more recently, Singapore has emerged as a major source, as a major destination for Indian tourists. So it is, on the whole, a multifaceted and multi-dimensional relationship. There is a good political understanding between the government of India and the government of Singapore. And I would say it's a very good step that the Prime Minister is visiting Singapore early in the tenure of a new Prime Minister in Singapore. So in that sense, this is an opportune conjuncture for this visit to take place. And I'm sure that from the statement issued, we will see many takeaways which will establish a roadmap for the future.
Thank you for giving our viewers a bird's eye view of the relationship as it evolved over the last decade and more, Ambassador. Let me now delve into the specifics, if you will. You mentioned about how Singapore accounts for the largest or the highest amount of FDI into India. You spoke about how the ties are quote-unquote problem-free. How do you look at the cooperation in terms of the new critical and emerging technologies, in particular semiconductors?
Well, Singapore, over the past 2 decades, has refashioned or reimagined itself as a major knowledge and a major technology center. And given our multifaceted relationship with Singapore, this creates the basis for us to move the frontiers of the relationship into new areas such as semiconductors, such as energy, and the third vital area in the future will be that of green energy, etc. So I would say that these frontier areas have a lot of potential, but the essential meat of the relationship will still be the trade and investment,
right?
The trade and investment aspect, and this is because of the way Singapore has made itself into a global trading platform and a global financial center. Because of that, the prospects for India-Singapore trade and India-Singapore investment cooperation go up quite significantly.
Ambassador Raghavan, do stay on. Let me quickly recap for the benefit of viewers joining us right now. India's Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, has landed in Singapore. In fact, he has reached Singapore from Brunei, where earlier in a historic visit to that country, India's Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, held a meeting with the Sultan of Brunei, Haji Hassan Al Bolkiah, on Wednesday and discussed ways to further cement the bilateral ties during the wide-ranging talks. The Sultan Haji Hassan Al Bolkiah and his close family members warmly welcomed the Prime Minister at the Istana Nurul Iman. The Istana Nurul Iman is the official residence of the Sultan. Right, so these are the visuals from earlier in the day when the Prime Minister reached the official residence of the Sultan of Brunei for delegation level talks, towards the end of which both sides signed a number of agreements, including in the fields of trade and investment, people-to-people linkages as well. The two leaders welcomed the elevation of the bilateral ties to an enhanced partnership as well. The Prime Minister invited Brunei's Sultan to pay a visit to India. Now, the historic visit of the Prime Minister will further boost action on India's Act East policy and its vision of the Indo-Pacific.
भारत की एक्ट ईस्ट पॉलिसी और इंडो पैसिफिक विजन में ब्रुनेई का महत्वपूर्ण साझेदार होना ये हमारे लिए उज्जवल भविष्य की गारंटी है। हम एक दूसरे की भावनाओं का सम्मान करते हैं। मुझे विश्वास है कि मेरी इस यात्रा से और हमारी चर्चाओं से आने वाले समय के लिए हमारे संबंधों को स्ट्रेटेजिक दिशा मिलेगी।
India and Brunei signed and exchanged memoranda of understanding on cooperation in the operation of telemetry, tracking and telecommand station for satellite and launch vehicles. A joint statement was adopted after the talks.
So they discussed emerging areas of bilateral cooperation such as fintech, the digital technology, digital payment systems, as well as renewable energy. Space has traditionally been an important area of bilateral cooperation. India's telemetry tracking and command station is located in Brunei, and both sides signed an MOU to take this relationship further forward.
After the bilateral talks, where discussions on a wide range of issues were held, the Sultan hosted an official lunch in honor of the Prime Minister, served with the tune of Vaishnav Janate Tene Kahiye and Bumro Bumro. So these are the visuals from earlier in the day, as I said before, of the banquet hosted by the Sultan of Brunei in honor of India's Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi. Now, motichur laddus and saffron peras were on the royal menu in honor of Prime Minister Modi at the Royal Palace, that's the Istana Nurul Iman, at the official luncheon. Prime Minister Modi thanked the entire royal family for the warm welcome and hospitality and lauded their deep historical and cultural ties between the two countries.
हम अपने राजनीतिक संबंधों की 40वीं सालगिरह मना रहे हैं। इस अवसर पर हमने निर्णय लिया है कि अपने संबंधों को एनहांस पार्टनरशिप का दर्जा देंगे। हमारी साझेदारी को स्ट्रेटेजिक दिशा देने के लिए हमने सभी पहलुओं पर व्यापक चर्चा की। हम आर्थिक, वैज्ञानिक और रणनीतिक क्षेत्रों में अपने सहयोग को मजबूत करने के लिए प्रतिबद्ध है।
In a joint statement released by both India and Brunei Darussalam, both countries reaffirmed their commitment to further strengthen, deepen and enhance their partnership in all areas of mutual interest. Both leaders held discussions for enhancing cooperation on a wide range of issues, including defense, connectivity, trade and investment, energy, including renewables, space, ICT, health and pharmaceuticals. Also, education and capacity building, culture, tourism, youth and people-to-people exchanges, as well as regional and international issues of mutual interest. The leaders acknowledged the importance of close interaction through existing bilateral mechanisms. They agreed to further expand bilateral trade and economic ties. They called for leveraging respective strengths in technology, finance and manufacturing. Both leaders recognized the importance of food security and agreed to enhance cooperation in the agriculture and food supply chain. India and Brunei acknowledged the importance of enhancing defense and maritime cooperation through regular exchanges of visits between the two countries. They welcomed a planned direct flight connectivity between Bandar Seri Begawan and Chennai, which will foster stronger people-to-people linkages. Both leaders recognized the important role of youth towards national development and agreed to promote greater youth exchanges between both countries. The leaders reaffirmed and reiterated their commitment to work closely in mutually beneficial areas to strengthen the ASEAN-India Comprehensive Strategic Partnership. They condemned terrorism in all its forms and manifestations and agreed on the urgent need to address climate change and enhance efforts in mitigating the adverse impacts from this rising challenge. The Sultan of Brunei appreciated India's support in hosting the ASEAN Centre for Climate Change. India's Prime Minister welcomed Brunei Darussalam's continued participation in the Voice of the Global South Summit. The Brunei media prominently covered the Indian Prime Minister's visit. A photograph of the Crown Prince receiving the Prime Minister at the Brunei International Airport was flashed on the front page of Borneo Bulletin newspaper. It also covered the Prime Minister's visit to the Sultan Omar Ali Saifuddin Mosque and shows him sitting next to the Minister of Religious Affairs and Health Minister of Brunei Darussalam and being welcomed by the members of the Indian community at the mosque. And joining me from Brunei is my colleague Munmun Bhattacharya. Munmun, what are the big takeaways from the joint statement issued towards the end of those delegation-level talks between the two leaders?
Yes, Ramesh, to my mind, the biggest takeaway is that both India and Brunei Darussalam are on the same page when it comes to the Indo-Pacific vision. Both say that all countries in the region should abide by UNCLOS, which is the international law on the seas. And both say that there's a need for stability in this region. Both say that there should be freedom of navigation and overflight in this region, that there should be maritime safety and security. Both say that it is important to follow the United Nations Charter as well as international law, that it is important to adhere to a rules-based international system. So the message going out loud and clear that various countries in Southeast Asia, where there are competing maritime claims by China, they are asserting the need for freedom of navigation and freedom of overflight. And Brunei Darussalam is also one of them. It's been so far a silent claimant to its economic zone or exclusive economic zone borders in the South China Sea. But the change seems to be more than incremental in this joint statement that has been issued. We still need to read between the lines to understand the gravitas of the joint statement because, like I said, almost everything here has been mentioned, and that may well mark a huge change in Brunei Darussalam's foreign policy in this region vis-a-vis China. Now, having said that, there are new areas of cooperation that have been stressed upon. There is ICT, there is cyber security, there's renewable energy, and there is new and emerging technologies. Besides that, it's been decided to take forward cooperation in the agricultural space, in pharmaceuticals and the health space. Now, as I've been saying over the past couple of days, that there was a likelihood of a memorandum of understanding in the space sector. And that is what has happened. Only one MOU was signed in exchange between the two sides. and that was to shift the telemetry tracking and command center or station that is there in Brunei Darussalam from one spot to another. So it's been shifted from Tunku to Telesai, and new transponders will be put there. So there will be a technology upgradation of sorts. Also within the space sector, it seems that both sides are exploring newer areas of cooperation. Besides remote sensing and training, they're also looking at satellite development. So far, Brunei Darussalam was helping India, and the joint statement thanks Brunei Darussalam for that, for allowing the establishment of the ISRO center here so that India could monitor the progress and movement of various space-related launches of launch vehicles and satellites. And in return, what India was doing was that it was helping the Brunei Darussalam by training their scientists as well as by other means. So that, of course, is being taken forward by space research and training of space scientists. They were helping. Again, training has been mentioned, remote sensing has been mentioned, but satellite development is the new thing that has been mentioned. So clearly it shows that in this landmark year for India-Brunei Darussalam ties, when both sides are celebrating 40 years of their diplomatic partnership, in 1984, Brunei Darussalam got independence from the British because it was a British commensurate since 1888. It was a British protectorate. And in 1984, it got independence, and 1984 was the year when both sides established diplomatic ties. This is also a particularly important year for India in the context of India's Act East policy. This is the 10th year since Prime Minister Narendra Modi announced the Act East policy. So we are marking a decade since that announcement as well, which is why various Southeast Asian countries were chosen by Prime Minister Narendra Modi for his visit this year, Brunei Darussalam, and then Singapore. And we've also seen high-level visits to other countries. Also, Malaysian Prime Minister and the Vietnamese Prime Minister were in India some time back, and even President of India had gone to Fiji, to New Zealand and Timor-Leste. So a lot of focus in this part of the world as far as India is concerned.
And before we let you go, Munmun, a quick word from you on the India-Brunei ties as they exist in terms of the Indian diaspora, the people-to-people ties. Give us a flavors, if you will, of the kind of welcome he received there, and what did the Indian diaspora have to say at the first ever visit to Brunei, a bilateral one by an Indian Prime Minister in nearly 4 decades.
Before I come to that, my sources have told me about the conversation that had taken place between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Sultan of Brunei Darussalam, Sultan Haji, and the contribution that has been made by the Indian diaspora to the society and economy here was specifically mentioned by both the sides. Because the Prime Minister did thank the Sultan for the welfare approach that he's had towards the Indian community, for the caring approach, that those were the words used, that the Sultan of Brunei Darussalam had towards the Indian nationals, have always had towards the Indian nationals, particularly during the COVID-19 pandemic years. And the Sultan did speak about the immense contributions that the Indian professionals, particularly doctors, teachers, engineers and IT professionals have made to the economy and society of Brunei Darussalam, which means that there is recognition of a small Indian community here by the highest quarters of India as well as Brunei. And of course, the Indian community or the Indian diaspora here was very excited. They got an opportunity to meet the Prime Minister at least twice on day one at the hotel where he was. He got a very warm welcome and reception from them. And then after that, at the inauguration of the new Chancery building of the Indian High Commission, again, there was an opportunity for the Indian diaspora to meet him, and he struck conversations, heartfelt at that, with the various members of the community there. There were students, there were children, there were those who were volunteering for the decor of the new Chancery building. And then, of course, at the mosque, he was warmly received by members of the Indian community, particularly Muslims. And so it's been very sort of a visit to remember, I would say, that, a visit to cherish for the Indian diaspora. Many of them had not met the Prime Minister, had not seen the Prime Minister at all. They were looking forward to this. And they feel a very strong sense of connect with India. Now with a direct flight starting from the 5th of November, they'll get a opportunity to visit India more often. More Indians will get to come here, work here, and tourism, of course, business ties, investment ties, trade ties, they're all set to get a boost. So people-to-people ties have definitely got a boost with this visit of the Prime Minister.
All right. On that note, Moon, thank you. Appreciate it for joining us and sharing your inputs with our viewers at home and abroad. Right, going back to my guest on this broadcast, Dr. T.C. Raghavan is still with us. Dr. Raghavan, thank you for your patience. Now, discussing what my colleague was reporting there from Bandar Seri Begawan, the capital of Brunei. There, in his in his talks with the Sultan of Brunei, the Prime Minister mentioning how India remains committed and supports freedom of navigation in the South China Sea, in the waters adjoining it as well. He spoke about how India wants and appreciates the need for a code of conduct among ASEAN countries. And last but not the least, he spoke about how India stands against expansionism without referring to any country in particular. Do you think that train of thought will be carried forward to his talks in Singapore as well?
I would imagine these ideas will figure in Singapore as well, because these are concerns which have been articulated within the ASEAN group for some years now. And the ASEAN countries are concerned about Chinese maritime assertion in the South China Sea, and to a great extent, our own perceptions and the ASEAN perceptions on this issue converge. So I would say, yes, these ideas will find themselves reflected during the Singapore leg of the visit also. And in fact, these are long-standing views which have often been stated by many countries, both in the region and outside it, that all the major powers in the region have to agree to a basic code of conduct, that there should be complete freedom of navigation and so on. There is, of course, a larger perspective also, which is that with Singapore, as indeed with Brunei and each of the ASEAN countries, we have very valuable bilateral relationships. So while the broader strategic and regional geopolitical issues are important, at the core of the Prime Minister's visit is the fact that we value the bilateral relationships that exist both with Brunei as also with Singapore.
And in that context, Ambassador, do you think there is scope for doing more for ramping up cooperation in defense and security? Ambassador, I hate to interrupt you there. I want to take our viewers live now to Singapore, where the Prime Minister is seen interacting with the Indian diaspora there, being greeted warmly by the members of the vibrant Indian community in Singapore. All right, those were the latest visuals coming to you from Singapore, where the Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, was seen interacting with members of the vibrant Indian community living in that country. All right, going back to my guest, Dr. T.C.A. Raghavan. Ambassador Raghavan, my apologies for interrupting you there. I was meant to ask you about defense and security cooperation, the scope for it between India and Singapore.
Well, you were asking whether there is scope for doing more. There is always scope for doing more. But in my view, the core of the relationship is the economic and investment relationship. And while it is a multifaceted relationship in which defense also plays an important part, I think the core of the relationship is not in the security or military realm, but in the economic and commercial realm. Singapore is, of course, given its geopolitical location and the historically very important port it is a vital stopping point for many of our naval vessels when they go deeper into the Pacific or into the Indo-Pacific. So yes, there is scope for increasing the extent of military-to-military and defense cooperation. But as I said, the core of the relationship will remain on the economic and investment aspects because of the way Singapore has fashioned itself into a major trading platform and as a global financial center.
How do you see the relationship evolve under the leadership in India of Prime Minister Modi and in Singapore of their new Prime Minister, Mr. Lawrence Wong?
Well, the relationship has been growing from strength to strength over the years. And I'm sure that in the future also it will continue to strengthen. As I mentioned, it is a problem-free relationship which enables both governments to focus on the positive aspects and not having to attend to any roadblocks or impediments. I will, however, say that the central aspect of the India-Singapore relationship also is the kind of roadmap which Singapore's development provides to us. You know, this is a tiny little country with virtually no natural or economic resources of its own. And from that very, very minimal starting point, they have fashioned themselves into a major global metropolis, a major financial center, a major trading center, and increasingly as a major education, knowledge, and technology center. Really, the lesson for us is to see how Singapore is able to do this and try to apply those lessons to our own conditions to the extent possible.
Before we close, Ambassador, based on what you said just now, I am curious to ask you, in terms of lessons and learnings, is there anything that Singapore can learn from India's experience? Any complementarities in that regard?
Well, I think the good thing about Singapore is that they are always open to learning.
Right.
But the scale of the two countries is vastly different. India is a continent, and Singapore is a small country, a speck in the Indian Ocean. The amazing thing is how they have fashioned themselves into becoming this global financial and trading center with virtually zero natural resources or economic resources of their own. In large part, that is because of the way they have successfully built a multicultural and pluralistic society. It's easy to overlook that 80% of Singapore is ethnically Chinese and 10% is of people who are ethnically Indian, and the other 10% who are ethnically Malay.
Right.
But despite this diversity, it is a genuinely multicultural and secular society. And because of that, it becomes a platform for talent from all over the world to converge over there and add to its growth story. I do think that there are lessons for us from this model.
Fair enough. On that note, Ambassador Raghavan, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your thoughts and insights with our viewers at home and abroad. Thank you for your time. Much appreciated. And still to come on DD India News Hour. UN nuclear watchdog chief discusses Ukraine-Russia nuclear plans with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky, says situation fragile. And former US President Donald Trump to plead not guilty to charges in revised indictment.
Complex issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think all dots are linked. We just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the dots to unravel hidden designs in statecraft, mysteries, and decode issues that matter to you. Watch Connecting the Dots with me at these times on DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. At the critical juncture in the conflict with Russia, Ukraine has witnessed a major government shake-up, being dubbed as part of a restructuring of the government. Ukraine's Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba is the latest to tender his resignation. Other high-profile ministers that resigned include country's arms chief, deputy chief of staff and deputy prime minister. The resignations, which leave over a third of the cabinet vacant, will be considered by the parliament at one of the next plenary sessions. Meanwhile, President Zelensky says the changes were being undertaken to ensure Ukraine had the strengthened government it needed.
Autumn will be extremely important for Ukraine. Our state institutions must be organized in a way that ensures Ukraine achieves all the results we need, all of us. To this end, we must strengthen certain areas within the government, and the personal decisions have been prepared. There will also be changes in the office. I also anticipate a different emphasis on certain areas of our foreign and domestic policy.
Now, recent airstrikes in Ukraine have led to serious consequences. In the city of Lviv, at least 7 people, including 3 children, were killed and more than 30 injured. Several residential buildings caught fire and 2 schools are to be closed on Wednesday. Explosions were also heard in Kyiv as air defenses worked to stop incoming missiles. Search and rescue operations are being carried out to remove the injured from the damaged building. Russia's defense ministry has confirmed the use of hypersonic Kinzhal system in the Lviv attack. At least 51 people were killed and 271 injured in another Russian strike in Ukraine's central town of Poltava. The Ukrainian city was hit by 2 ballistic missiles on Tuesday, deemed to be the conflict's deadliest single attack this year. Poltava's governor said 1 military personnel was killed in the attack, while 15 people were still feared trapped under the debris. Fighting has intensified over the past month, with Russian forces advancing in eastern Ukraine, while Kyiv's troops have mounted their first large-scale cross-border assault into Russia. Moscow has vowed to retaliate for the incursion into the Kursk region. UN Nuclear Energy Agency's Rafael Grossi met Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky on Tuesday and discussed the state of affairs at the Kursk nuclear plant in Russia, which Ukrainian troops are close to. While Grossi will visit the Russian-occupied Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant in southeast Ukraine on Wednesday, saying the situation there was very fragile and the risk of a disaster remained. Grossi visited Russia's Kursk plant last week, after which he said the situation at both the nuclear power plants were different.
I think the situation I have very often characterized it as very fragile. With a certain, for some days we have some stability, and then the next day there is an event, an issue, a drone impact, or like today we had one of the 2 existing power lines down, which means that the station is again on the verge of being on a blackout. We had 8 of those in the past, as you know. So I would tend to agree when we say that the situation is very serious indeed.
All right, going back to the top story we're tracking on DD India News Hour, India's Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, has arrived in Singapore a short while ago. Upon his arrival, he was given a rousing welcome by the Indian diaspora. All right, let me get you some more news now. The U.S. has announced criminal charges on the Hamas on Tuesday. The U.S. announced the charges against Hamas's top leaders for their roles in planning, supporting and perpetrating the 7th October attacks in Israel that killed 1,200 people, including more than 40 U.S. citizens. The complaint names 6 defendants. 3 of them are deceased. The living defendants are Yahya Sinwar, who is believed to be in hiding in Gaza, Khalid Mishal, who is based in Doha and heads the group's diaspora office, and Ali Baraka, a senior Hamas official based in Lebanon. Whereas the deceased defendants are former Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh, who was assassinated in July in Iran, Military Wing Chief Mohammed Deif, who Israel says it killed in a July airstrike, and Marwan Issa, a deputy military commander who Israel said it had killed in the month of March. Now, U.S. prosecutors brought charges against the 6 men in February and kept the complaint under seal but decided to go public with the charges after Ismail Haniyeh's death. Meanwhile, protests continued for the third consecutive night in Israel's capital, Tel Aviv, for demanding a ceasefire that would include a deal to return Hamas hostages. The protests, sparked by the recovery of 6 bodies of captives in Gaza over the weekend, also witnessed general strike by Israel's largest trade union on Monday. Authorities earlier informed that all 6 hostages were killed within 48 to 72 hours before their recovery. International pressure is escalating for the ceasefire deal, even as mediation efforts are yet to produce a deal between Israel and the Hamas. Terming it as the need of the hour, the US has said that it is working day and night to get an agreement.
We are working day and night to try to get an agreement over the line because we believe an agreement is manifestly in the interests of all the parties involved. We are going to continue to try and get an agreement over the line. We're going to work to put a proposal together with Egypt and with Qatar that we believe both parties should accept, and I will leave it at that for now.
For its part, the United Nations Security Council has said that it will consider taking action if a ceasefire is not brokered soon between Israel and Hamas. Council President for September, Samuel Zboger, said patience is running out among UNSC members.
There is a rising anxiousness in the Council that it has to move one way or the other. Either there is a ceasefire or that the Council then reflects on what else we can do to bring the ceasefire. In my national capacity, I was saying the same thing. But this is the general, and it's quite a mood in the Council. So I think this is the tension that is raising, and I'm pretty sure that in September it will have to go, under our presidency, it will have to go one way or the other, not because we want so, but because I think the patient is out.
In Nigeria's northeastern Yobe state, at least 81 people have died and several are missing after an alleged attack by the Boko Haram. The locals said that the death toll could be higher. The attack took place on Sunday afternoon local time in Yobe, one of the 3 states at the front line of an insurgency that has lasted 15 years. Thousands of Nigerians have been killed and more than 2 million displaced. A police spokesperson said the attack was apparently in retaliation for the killing of 2 suspected Boko Haram fighters by vigilantes. In other news, U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris will propose a tax deduction of up to $50,000 for new small businesses on Wednesday, a tenfold increase over existing relief and her latest economic policy aimed at winning over middle-class Americans after jumping into the presidential race over a month ago. Harris is aiming to draw a contrast with her opponent, Republican Donald Trump, on broad economic strategy, specifically on tariffs and taxes. A progressive economic agenda is focused on taxing wealthier individuals and companies more and increased federal funding for child care and other social programs aimed at working parents.
We finally have the opportunity.
Former U.S. President Donald Trump said in a court filing on Tuesday that he would plead not guilty to criminal charges in a revised indictment accusing him of attempting to overturn his 2020 election defeat. Trump, the Republican candidate in the presidential election, waived his right to appear in court and instead authorized his lawyers to enter the plea. The revised indictment obtained last week by special counsel Jack Smith includes the same 4 charges prosecutors had brought against Trump last year. He was accused of attempting to defraud the United States, obstruct congressional certification of the election, and deprive voters of their right to a fair vote.
If I don't get immunity, then crooked Joe Biden doesn't get immunity, and all of the things he's done to allow the border invasion, millions and millions of people coming into our country, many from prisons, jails, mental institutions, insane asylums, many terrorists coming into our country. That's really allowing insurrection. When they talk about threat to democracy, that's your real threat to democracy. And I feel that as a president, you have to have immunity. Very simple.
The 12th edition of Paper Arabia 2024 is underway in Dubai. It focuses on sustainability and reducing the industry's carbon footprint. India is among the 10 participating countries and companies as well. The three-day expo, which began on 3 September, provides a platform for Indian manufacturers to showcase products and technologies to a global audience. It will feature discussions on waste management, recycling solutions, and other strategies to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. For the first time, the expo will have exhibitors representing the non-woven sector.
From India, we have a participation of more than 10 companies, which also one of the companies provide the major technology in the sustainability sector. Also, we have an economic SEPA with Dubai, with the UAE government and India. So we would like also people to take advantage of this opportunity.
India's President Draupadi Murmu is visiting the Latur city of the western state of Maharashtra. She inaugurated the Vishwa Shanti Buddha Vihara in Udgir. The event was also graced by the state's Governor C.P. Radhakrishnan, Chief Minister Eknath Shinde, Indian Minister of State for Social Justice Ramdas Athavale, and Deputy Chief Ministers Devendra Fadnavis and Ajit Pawar. The President will also participate in the Mahila Anand Melava at the Udaygiri College grounds and address a gathering of beneficiaries of the Shasan Aplia Dari. President Murmu is on a 3-day visit to Maharashtra. And now to news from the world of sport. Let's take all the updates from the Paris Paralympics. In news just coming in, India's para-athlete Sachin Sarjirao Khilari won the silver medal in the men's shot put F46 with his best throw of 16.32 meters at the Paris Paralympics 2024. Khilari's journey to the podium was a testament to his resilience, determination and desire to overcome physical challenges. In the finale, Sachin began with a poor first throw and that failed to touch 15 meters and recorded just 14.72 meters, but he came back stronger. His next throw was 16.32 meters, putting him on top. The 16.32 meter throw from Sachin was also an area record. The gold medal was won by Canada's Greg Stewart, who threw 16.34 meters. With this, India's Paris Paralympics tally has reached 21 medals. And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of DD India News Hour. You can get all the latest news and updates on the DD India mobile app. It's available on Android and iOS platforms. You can scan the QR code on the screen to download it. And let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X and Instagram. You can also check out our website ddindia.co.in. We will be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran from all of us here in New Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour.